OsteoSignal with Neal O'Neal, Episode 3. This is OsteoSignal with Neal D. O'Neal, a podcast exploring how your body's natural design connects with osteopathic science, translating complex signals into practical insight so you can truly thrive.
My name is Neal O'Neal. I'm an osteopathically trained manual physical therapist. I've worked on patients for 30 years, and I have hundreds of thousands of hours. Well, okay, I shouldn't say that. I have 75 to 100,000 patient hours of treatment, and in that time of interacting with patients and the medical system, and my role as an osteopathically trained therapist who's trying to provide a health model or a health delivery model, I've noticed that there are a lot of problems with how medical care is provided. And joining me is Autumn Mayberry. She's a osteopathically trained manual therapist, has been for 22 years. And welcome, Autumn.
Still learning, but yeah, thank you.
So she's going to help provide some insight. Sometimes you can't always recognize what you're doing in a profession. So we brought in some other people who've done this. We also have Brent Mayberry with us, helping us keep this on track.
Yeah, hello. I'm just here I don't have any manual therapy training, but I'm just here to kind of help maybe give a layman's perspective on this and ask them some follow-up questions for listeners out here who are new to the manual therapy.
Yep.
Great.
We're glad you're here too.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's get going. So why would you care about, why would the general public care about osteopathic manual therapy? What's the role of osteopathic manual therapy? And, I think the most important thing to really tell people is our job is to restore function. And we do that because we treat at the cellular level, right? We treat cells at their level of function. We maximize that function and we try to deliver health. Okay. We don't treat symptoms.
Absolutely.
Unfortunately, the traditional medical system, it's so based on treating symptoms, right? Now, part of that, I think, unfortunately, is just because there's a lot of people with a lot of problems going on and they need somewhere to go to find that help, but they don't always know where to go. And for osteopathic manual therapy, there just really aren't that many of us that have been trained this way.
Correct.
Right? Now, the other problem with the traditional medical care system is that they're a disease treatment system. And while that's awesome if you have a disease and you need immediate treatment, first aid, things like that, things where your life is in danger and we're on a very edge here, then that's great. You do need somewhere where that emergency healthcare is, where that life-threatening healthcare is, where things have to be done in a very short period of time. Otherwise, someone might lose their life. That's very important. The problem is that their role in healthcare is expanded, really, and really the seminal moment for that was the invention of antibiotics. It seemed like the MDs all of a sudden had a magic bullet, and so the public said, "Well, wow! If these people are that smart and they have this magic bullet for infection, which most of us today just really can't imagine how dangerous infections were in those times." And
For sure.
Right. Yeah. It was very scary. Any infection could kill you. And so people had to be very careful with things. And people suffered their entire lives, the consequences of chronic infection. And this day and age, we kind of ignore or brush off infection and then last second, things have gotten desperate. I'll just go to the doctor and get an antibiotic shot and they'll pull me back from the edge, not realizing like how close to the edge of death they could be by that. So then that magic bullet really was incredible and is awesome.
Yep.
Don't get me wrong. When you need antibiotics, boy, you want them. And when you want the medical care system for immediate health, life-saving measures, that's who you need. The problem is that silver bullet, right? That magic bullet then made people feel like, well, then these people know about everything and they have a magic bullet for everything.
For every problem.
For every problem. So we want that magic bullet at all times for all problems. And of course, doctors are good people. They're trying to help patients just like the rest of us. And so, of course, they tried to expand their ability, their knowledge, and said, well, there's some things we can do about various things. The problem is that medical care can be extraordinarily expensive. And certainly there are other people that are in the system or in healthcare more to make money than to provide healthcare. And so the doctors become owned by bean counters. And so
Hmm.
there's this idea of, oh, we need to make more and more and more dollars per minute than we have before to pay for bigger and bigger, hospitals and bigger and greater care,
Greater costs for them too.
greater cost. No, some of these things cost incredible amounts.
Yep.
But if we take those greater costs and then look at, well, how much have they actually helped provide healthcare to humanity? It's like, well, they don't provide healthcare; they provide disease treatment.
Hmm.
Whereas that's exactly the role of osteopathic manual therapy. Is our job is to restore function and remove barriers to health to allow the patient to thrive.
Yep.
So it's not just an incentive problem with the traditional medical system. It's also their maybe, I don't know, philosophical approach. I don't know if that's the right term, but their approach to healthcare in general. They're trying to apply that magic bullet to everything. And so that approach, it mostly deals with symptom alleviation and not necessarily function restoration. Would that be accurate to say?
Oh, I think that's very accurate. Yes, because then to come up with a new magic bullet that works as well as, say, an antibiotic for that problem, they say, well, if we make their symptoms disappear, they'll think we're still magic.
Yeah.
Yeah, is what you're saying.
And a lot of people, if their symptoms go away, then they think that the entire problem maybe has gone away.
Right.
And when that's not necessarily the case, I think is the point you're
Exactly.
making.
Exactly. I think that is the problem. And patients realize that at some point. They realize they've gone to the doctor and they've tried this or tried that. And sometimes the doctors tell them, we have nothing for you. Or the doctors say, well, we have this and this and this. We have pain medication. We have this, that, the other. That's not what I want. I want you to address my problem.
Right.
Mhm. And it's a lot of kicking the can down the road too. We're going to try this for a couple months. If that doesn't work, then we've got some other stuff we can try. And they're coming from a standpoint of we don't even know, right? And the patient's going, well, I don't have anywhere else to go. Or at least that's what they think. And we have a different training and a different way of looking at things and different successes, but there aren't that many of us either. So it's hard to find someone like how we've been trained to treat things.
Right, exactly. And that's just it. There are lots of healthcare practitioners out there. Unfortunately, so many of them try to assume the knowledge of the MDs and then say, okay, well, then I'm going to do this disease treatment approach as well and be be as important as the doctors.
Right.
And that again, that's just a secret recipe for not success.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That's a sure way to failure.
So I'm looking forward to hearing how osteopathy, addresses the root cause of
Right.
problems to restore function, to eliminate those obstacles
Well, we're going to tell you, Brandon.
to proper function. Yes. All right.
All right. Oh yes. So let's get into it. So, one of the big things is that we treat at the cellular level, right? Cells, how those cells function. We could pick out any set of cells in the body, but maybe the most important cells for a lot of life processes are hepatocytes, right? Liver cells. How do liver cells function? Because so much of our health is tied up in how these hepatocytes function
And who we are.
and who we are, right?
Yeah.
I mean, even down to your preferences for food or other
Mhm.
things like that. Things that are surprising that you would think, no, that's not there. Patients who've gotten liver transplants have reported that all of a sudden they like different foods or they
Yep.
have different tastes in various things, music, etc. So,
Wow.
which is kind of odd and begs a lot of other questions. But so that liver is really important. But the liver as a whole is made up of a bunch of cells, and those cells, while they're very similar cells, they can have very different functions. And your liver goes along and says, and has this role of, let's say that you eat certain foods or you have certain chemicals you come in contact with, or there are certain poisons, or it has to handle a lot of things coming through. There's a virus that comes through that has to be taken out of the blood. So hepatocytes have a tremendous amount of work to do all the time. All your metabolic needs are met, right? There are 13 basic baseline metabolic processes that are all performed by your hepatocytes, and that metabolic problems come from a dysfunction in your liver cells to be able to meet the needs of that metabolic demand.
Mhm.
So are there 13 different types of hepatocytes,
No,
or do some hepatocytes fulfill multiple
Multifunction.
roles? They're
Multitask.
Yeah.
right? That's a great question. The hepatocytes are right. They're chemical experts. They do all sorts of stuff. Now they may become more especially if you take a certain medication regularly, or someone drinks alcohol regularly, or somebody drinks caffeine regularly, there's going to be a certain amount of your liver that says, we're the part that deals with this.
There's an adaptation that happens.
There's an adaptation, and they take care of that.
Cool.
Okay, so, but that's our goal, is to treat those cells on their level. And there's a little underlying information that will help people understand like why that's important. Because all of your cells function this way, but the hepatocyte's a good example. That hepatocyte, when it's doing its job and it's meeting its own cellular needs, right? It has its own metabolic needs. And when it meets those needs and it does its job, one of the things that it does is it releases a hormone called autocrine factors to itself to tell itself, good job, I've done a good job. It pats itself on the back, basically.
Yep.
Okay. So then what happens is, once it's patted itself on the back, it says, I should really tell my neighbors that they're probably doing a good job, and I want to let them know I'm doing a good job, so I'm going to give them a paracrine factor, a hormone that goes out to cells around it and will affect their function and make them happier.
Yep.
Right? So then now the group of hepatocytes, hey, we are the ones that all take care of medication, and so, that medication we take regularly, and we're the ones that take care of it and get rid of it and make sure that it goes out of the system at the right amount of time and doesn't harm our whole environment. So we're all good. We're all going to pat ourselves on the back. And then after that, they all say, we're doing such a great job down here. We should really let the hypothalamus and the brain know we're doing such a great job. So we're going to release an endocrine factor, a hormone that goes and tells the brain, hey, by the way, we're doing a great job. Gold star for us. You should just keep that in mind.
Yeah.
Okay. But that also makes the person say, gosh, I'm having a great day. Mm-hmm. So the hypothalamus tells the person, hey, all the cells saying we're doing a great job. They're getting gold stars. I say we get a gold star. What do you think? And the person's going, man, I love sunny days. So there you go. There's kind of the way this function from cells to tissues to organs to organ systems to the entire organism. That's this organization of this function and what we call survival and thrival. Right? Not only do we want the organism or ourselves to survive, we want to thrive. Mm-hmm. And we've all heard of babies or certain people that they're about to pass away because it's a failure to thrive, right? That is a medical description of something that's going on. And what we're seeking is the exact opposite of that, is thrival.
Mm-hmm. Could you elaborate on that? What would happen to the body when it's thriving?
Okay, so you continue your growth, your development. So for children particularly, right, they come out of the womb as a very healthy baby, right? They are on normal weight, they're normal development. They're not behind on anything. They don't have their organ systems are functioning as a newborn should when they're coming out. And then even from that point, that the baby then might lose a little weight at first, but then starts to feed and starts to take in those calories and break down those calories and use those calories to build, fat, to continue to build the tissues. So protein, muscle, organs, even grow the organs. The organs continue to grow through childhood, mm-hmm. right? So that, so for example, the intestinal tract, lots of kids are going to have problems with their intestinal tract through childhood because that's not an adult GI tract. It's a child's GI tract. And as it comes in contact with more and more things and more advanced, chemicals, preservatives, these things, those are challenges to a non-fully developed system, mm-hmm. right? Mm-hmm. But so that's the thrival, though. But this system takes those in, moves on, grows. The child is happy, has attention and energy. They are successful in life. They're able to put on weight. That's mainly what we mean by thrive.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. So back to that part that we hold. Well, so what happens when an adult or a child or whomever, a patient, is not thriving? There's various ways they don't thrive. Their immune system doesn't function at its optimum. Mm-hmm. It's either hypersensitive, hyposensitive, right? It doesn't respond appropriately. It's erratic. Mm-hmm. It can be an erratic response, or it can respond properly in some situations, like bacterial infection or a viral infection, but responds inappropriately. Say, oh, gee, I got a bee sting, and now I'm going into anaphylaxis, and this is like third time in my life I've ever had a bee sting. Mm-hmm. Okay, so we see this autocrine, paracrine, endocrine function of these cells, and really, as a manual therapist, we are looking at that, saying, what are all the things that occur to help cells function on that cellular level? Well, they need an exchange of fluids. They need certain chemicals. They need to have the appropriate support. So the appropriate support comes from the sympathetic nervous system, the fight or flight mechanism, and the parasympathetic system, which we call rest and digest. And a lot of times sympathetics are given a bad rap saying, oh, they're terrible, they're bad. We need stressors to function at a higher level, right? That those stressors, that we call that sports training. We call that growing. We call that having an appropriate immune response. We call that healing. Anything that's an inflammatory response involves the sympathetics, right? And it actually involves, it's a good thing that we have that. However, as long as it comes, it serves its purpose and it goes.
Yes.
And the problem with that is it doesn't always go. Right? So again, back to this, how do we treat on the cellular level? Well, we help optimize that sympathetic response. We help it go away when it was supposed to have gone away, right? Now,
what is the mechanism that you use to do that in a treatment? Can we talk about that for a minute? Or
yeah, no, sure.
are you going to bring that up later?
No, let's do it right now because so the sympathetics have cell bodies, right? And so
this is nervous tissue.
This is nervous tissue
throughout your body,
everywhere in your body. In fact, all of your nervous tissue functions this way. And in fact, all of your nervous system functions this way. There is sensory input. The neuron, the cell body of the neuron, takes that information in
from the environment.
Right? And that might be in an internal environment, might be those hepatocytes and how the liver feels about your last meal or about the last virus that came along, or it might be the external environment, your eyes, your skin, a Ruffinian, a receptor in your skin. So that information is going to come in, and then those neurons are going to pass that information along, and they may have some processing to be done, right? And then they may pass that on, and there's some processing, and then we'll set up reflexes based on that. So there are motor responses because of the sensory input. For example, the knee-jerk response is the most simple, but that's what we call a somatic or body wall one. That's much more straightforward and doesn't last over time. The reflexes that last over time are sympathetic and parasympathetic. And so the way that we change those inputs is that the cell bodies where they collect, and those are called ganglia, those ganglia start to make decisions. And sometimes when they're making those decisions, they get stuck in those decision-making processes. So they get into a track and they can't get themselves out of the track. They start responding the same way all the time, right? And that track becomes inappropriate, right? Too much sympathetic is a bad thing.
What's an example of a track that you see your patients in? Just a quick example, not tons of elaboration, but what's a track you see a lot?
Well, swelling.
Yeah.
Edema would be the primary, right? When people have edema. And there is no such thing as pain without swelling. If there's no edema, there's no pain. Right? So that sensitizes neurons. So it takes what are normal sensations and turns them into nociceptive, which is the precursor to pain. Pain is in the brain. Pain is only in the brain, but it's called nociception when it's taken in by the nerves. So noxious stimuli.
Right.
Okay, is what we would call that. And if they get caught in that of everything's a noxious stimuli, then everything's painful in the brain. So the brain's like, well, we have all this noxious stimuli. It must be painful. And so patients end up being in chronic pain. Well, that's not thriving. Chronic pain, actually shrinks the brain, causes lots of other problems. And edema, chronic edema, is not thriving. Right? Those aren't good processes because now it starts breaking down your body in specific ways. It'll break down a joint. It'll break down a muscle. It'll break down an organ. It'll break down your nervous tissue. Right? Advanced aging of body parts.
Yep.
Wow.
Right.
And so how do you address the ganglia?
Well, the first and foremost, you have to know where they are, and then you have to understand their hierarchy of sharing information, how they return that information to the brain, and how either the brain or the spinal cord or these ganglia that are actually out in the intestinal tract. There are as many neurons in the intestinal tract as there are in your central nervous system.
Wow.
We tend to think that's pretty important, that central nervous system, and yet there are just as many in your gut. So you're thinking, well, okay.
And when you say gut, do you just mean the digestive system or just your abdomen in general?
Well, actually.
What is the gut? Sorry.
So the gut, actually, yes, sorry. Thank you for pointing that out. When we say gut, we actually mean viscera or organs.
Okay.
Okay. And organs, we've had in a previous podcast where we talked about organs can even be your shoulder capsule, anything that produces a fluid, because those fluids have to be maintained. Their protein content, their electrolyte content has to be maintained. In fact, it actually has to change. It has to vacillate back and forth from one, not an extreme, but it does have to go back and forth. And that change back and forth is supplied by sympathetic input, then parasympathetic input, sympathetic input. So there's this sharing of direction, right, by the sympathetics and the parasympathetics. So the fight or flight is necessary, but so is the rest and digest. And so our job is to understand, first off, you have to inhibit, and with our hands, we're able to find these ganglia, and then you put pressure on them, or we do things that remove edema or allow edema to flow through a tissue. Sometimes once edema has built up in an area, because of the nature of it, of the what we call osmotic and oncotic pressures, again, that's just fancy words for saying electrolytes or proteins have built up in the area, free proteins have built up in the area, and that draws fluid in. That's edema. And if a chemical builds up in an area, it's going to draw fluid into it. And that, like a bee sting, it's a chemical. It's going to, and it's not the one that your body produced. So it's going to draw fluid into the area that causes it.
Dilute it and flush it out, or
right, exactly. Yeah. Right. Try to dilute it, because first off, that's a chemical mandate, right? From chemistry in high school, if you put electrolytes, you have a semi-permeable membrane, and you put electrolytes on one side in some water, then water from the other side will be drawn across the semi-permeable membrane to dilute those electrolytes, right?
Seek for that equilibrium on both sides of the membrane.
Right. Yeah. It seeks an equilibrium. So that's exactly what the body's doing. The problem is sometimes that equilibrium is detrimental to health, because it causes pain, it causes dysfunction, it causes, like a joint. If a joint swells up and that swelling is maintained, or that edema is maintained and doesn't change, that breaks down the cartilage, that breaks down the joint stops functioning. It's good for the joint to have stress, but it's mandatory for that stress to go away so that healing can the rest and digest, the rebuilding of tissues can occur. So we have to tear things down and build them back. And if that process doesn't happen appropriately, the patient gets stuck there, and then they stop having health. They start having advanced aging or breakdown of tissues. And the cells themselves will release factors that say, we're not happy here. For example, one of the best examples is the GLP-1s have come out, and what they do is exactly that. They affect liver cells. They affect various cells, visceral fat cells. And they give those cells what the cells think is glucose. So the receptor on the cell attaches to that glucose, and the cell goes, oh, look at that. I got some glucose. I must be doing a good job. Kudos to me, pat myself on the back, paracrine factor. I better tell my neighbors, autocrine factor. I better tell the brain, endocrine factor.
Yep.
Right. So now the brain, the entire liver, but not just the liver, but the system of the liver. So what are the other organs that function with the liver? Obviously the gallbladder, the small intestine, the pancreas, right? I mean, it goes on and on from there, right? There's more and more. We can take that all the way. Stomach, stomach has to. Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
But that visceral fat, that brown fat, is an organ, right? It's not an evil organ. It's just doing its job. But of course, what's happened is that metabolic structure of its metabolic job has gotten out of whack, and so it keeps going further and further out of function, meaning that it's further and further out of health. And we see that as we see, this patient now has type 2 diabetes, or now has fatty liver disease, or this patient has, et cetera, whatever disease process, right? Or breakdown process. Now, those processes are actually somewhat reversible to some level, right? And what we do as osteopathic manual therapists, we don't fix this that kind of pathology, but the penumbra of dysfunction around it is something that we can do about. And one of the best ways that we do that is going back and saying, what do those cells need? Those cells need fluid to wash away their waste products. They need proper, give and take innervation or feedback from the autonomics, or the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous systems. So they need vagus to come in, and they need the sympathetics to come in and be in charge. So it has to be this give and take. And it's that, and all of life is about, the up and the down, the wave and the trough, right? If it doesn't, like the tide coming in and going out, coming in and going out. If all of a sudden we no longer had tides, there would be a whole lot less life on our coastlines.
Gotta have that dynamic equilibrium.
Right. Yeah. We call it dynamic equilibrium, homeostasis, whatever you want to call it. But it's that constant change, slow and steady back and forth that creates health and an environment for survival and thrival. And that's really our job, is to look at the ecosystem of the body and say, where has that ecosystem gone wrong? Where are the marshes? And let's get the fluid out of the marsh so that fluid can come through the marsh, but not get stuck in the marsh. Right. And then that area becomes a wetland. Well, wetlands are amazingly productive.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what we're trying to do, is maintain the
Pleasant
wetlands.
places to be.
Exactly. Pleasant places to be. Exactly. So that's really the role of an osteopathic manual therapist, is to say, where can I go through the body and we don't want deserts.
Mhm.
Deserts actually perform better than marshes,
Mhm.
but we still don't want deserts where there's just not as much life. We want abundance of life and abundance of health. And that's what we do, is we go and look through and say, how do these, not only the structures, but the cells that help with the structures. For example, let's say a joint, you would say, oh, well, I'm going to go to my chiropractor. I'm going to go to my I have this other person who says they're a manual therapist, and they're going to manipulate my knee and they're going to pop it and make it work better. And I'm going to tell that patient, say, well, that's great, but what are they going to do for the synovium, the cells that produce the fluid that maintains the internal health of a joint? If they're not thinking about the synovium and what they have to do to maintain that function, again, sympathetic, parasympathetic, blood flow, fluid flow, and then function of the structures below that synovium, and the function of the structures above that. Because, for example, if a knee goes bad, it's as much the fault of the ankle and the hip as it is the knee. So you can't just draw this 6-inch box around something and say, oh, what can I treat in here? What will make my patient happy and me money inside this 6-inch box? You're going to waste the patient's time. You're actually not going to really truly help in the long run. You will maybe have short-term gains, but as soon as the patient stops doing the exercise, or they stop doing this, or they stop doing that, the same problem is there. And as many patients understand, even when they do the exercise, that actually makes it worse.
Mhm.
Or even when they do some of these other treatments, they're like, well, I wished I hadn't done that. And I spent a bunch of money and a bunch of time. And that not only did that not help, it actually made things worse.
Yep. I get that report a lot from patients too.
Yeah. I mean, Autumn,
It's
you
really
have
common.
experience in this. Tell us about some of your experiences.
Like with swelling and stuff. I mean, yeah. I mean, I've had patients that were, in the hospital and, told that they were on diuretics, for example, and one friend I went to go visit in the hospital, and he was like, well, I can't, this might, hopefully this is an opening can of worms. We'll talk about this another time too, but, he wasn't drinking water, right? They're having on these diuretics. And as long as the people that were taking care of him could say like the water out, his urine production was higher than what, water he was coming in, then it was a success, right? But the problem was I, happened to sneak a peek as he was leaving the bathroom, and I could see what color the urine was, and it was fecal matter brown, right?
Ooh.
And so you're going, I don't care what the doctor said, you can't change physiology. You got to get some water in your kidneys, right? And I was able to get work on synovium and all kinds of other stuff, and clear some spaces around where the organs can drain after he was out of there, and and before morning he'd peed off 9 pounds of fluid. But it was because we're messing with those oncotic systems, and we're, with the thing, those microprocesses, right? And going, okay, well, and also you need to drink more water because, in certain areas of your body, you are the desert. In other areas of the body, you're the marsh.
Right. He was a
And
collection of deserts and
yeah,
marshes.
yeah. And so, I mean, his wife was like, gosh, I can get the leg you started first. I could get his
His sock on, or
sock on
his compression
really
garment.
easy.
Yeah.
And the other ones, you can tell we did that one second because it's not as far along yet, but over time, and it can be really quick. We've known that story about our mentor that was in the hospital, messing with the patient that was in kidney failure and
Right.
stuff. So, I mean, these things are, especially depending on where you can intervene, right, and help restore that function. The body does have the ability to like start working together with cells and organs and organ systems and the whole organism. Like in the wetlands, it's all kinds of ecosystems coexisting beautifully, right? And that's what we want for our patients. So they feel good and they rest well, they eat well, they can eliminate waste well, all that kind of stuff. We're always looking for those kinds of things.
Exactly. So that's really it, is taking the multiple systems of the body, the organs and their organ systems, and then having those organ systems integrate themselves
Hmm.
in a meaningful way. That's what not only survival is, but that's what Thrival is.
Yeah.
And I think that's unique to osteopathy. I think traditional medicine, they're just hyper focused, hyper specialized on one organ, not even a system, in one aspect.
Yes.
Yeah,
exactly.
just joints, just the heart, just the lungs, just the nervous system, and they're not looking at how everything integrates.
And even in some adjunct therapies, there's more of a loyalty or a devotion to a certain therapy. Like I do PRP, or I'm a deep tissue, or I'm a I'm a myofascial, or well, myofascial is great if you have a myofascial problem. If you need PRP, then that's a good thing. But we can't just go the other way and
What's
say,
PRP?
oh, protein-rich platelet.
Oh yeah, we talked about that.
Okay, so
Yeah.
platelet-rich plasma.
Plasma. Sorry.
Yeah.
Platelet-rich plasma.
Yes,
Right.
that's right. But yeah, sometimes we come up from like an approach way, right? Like if I identify as a certain type of therapist and I provide this kind of care, well, that's great if the problem matches. If the hammer matches your nail, right? But if it matches it, if it's a screw, you're in trouble. Kind of thing.
Right. Hammering
So-
screws doesn't work very well.
Yeah. So that's one of the things I like about the way that we're taught is to try and identify the type of dysfunction that we see and use the appropriate tool. And then once that is resolved, then we have to be able to fluctuate to a different tool, because now we have maybe that cell's working, but the organ's not working well with the other things. And so we're like, okay, now that's not going to get me any further. I've got to, move my technique or my approach to this kind of another, to incorporate these other things and be able to be fluid.
Because cells need, they have lymphatic needs. They need waste products taken away, but they need nutrients brought in. They need, liquid nerves to communicate, but they also need hardwired nerves to help them regulate and modulate.
Yep.
Right. So it's this integration of processes and integration of systems that's really what we hang our hat on. That's what we really do. We integrate all of these systems, all these parts, and then cells in various places. Right. And that's one of the ways we know where to go is which set of cells are dysfunctioning.
Mm-hmm.
And those dysfunctions don't always show up in lab results. That's the whole problem.
Right.
Right. Because there's an organ will, its last dying breath will be to make sure that a lab will look appropriate. That's its goal, is to say, look, I'm supposed to output this, what we've measured in the past. And we say, oh, well, this is what the liver outputs. This is what the pancreas outputs. So the last dying gasp of that organ will be to do what it was supposed to do. And then it's done.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So you can't always look at labs and say, oh, what's dysfunctional or what's pathological, what's going away.
Mm-hmm.
There's a much larger, deeper look at those things, saying we need to see this. Like, for example, if there's a cliff coming up, but a blind man is walking down the cliff and he's about to take that next step that is off the cliff, hey, as far as he knows, he's on solid ground and has no danger, right? But that next step is off the cliff into open space.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that's our job, is to turn that person around and say, no, let's go back this way, back to where everything where every step will be safe for you, where every step will be good for you.
Yep.
Okay, so that's really the role of osteopathic treatment. And that's why people would really want to find an osteopathic, somebody who thinks osteopathically and really takes into account that the 1 6-inch box around where their problem isn't where all the treatment should be focused. I'm not saying that there can't be interventions by the MDs, that we don't need disease treatment, but that health delivery system, that health delivery focus to the cells and to the organs and to the organ systems and the integration of the organ systems, that focus is just not out there. And that's really what an osteopathically trained manual therapist is supposed to provide, and at least the people that we work with.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And about that 6-inch box, you're going to treat there eventually, right? But is it what you do on the treatment number 1? Is it what you do in treatment number 2? Is it where you kind of do it like later half or whatever? Or do you have to start way completely on the other end of the body, right? And so it's not that you're not going to do anything there. But when is the right time? When is it in the right order?
Exactly. I mean, that's all the training.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. So my question is, where, if people listening at home, what could they do to find an osteopathic manual therapist? Is there like a directory? We probably maybe should create one or something like that.
Exactly. Actually, on our website, we are going to start listing. We have a training program where I teach classes, and people are being trained in these processes and these treatment ideas, and they are going through the classes and they're developing their knowledge base. And so what we do is we have a list of people who have mastered that. We have master clinicians. We have people who have taken some classes. So we can at least direct people. And so we have a directory for people to go and look at and say, hey, who's somebody that's near me that I can go and see? Not everybody can come see Autumn or I. You're welcome to try, but
Yep.
But so what we have is we have a directory of people who have taken our classes, and then we're going to give you an indication of like, well, how many classes have they taken? We have clinician level.
Practitioner, I think, is the basic one, and then clinician, master clinician.
And eventually
then-
biohacker.
Yeah,
when we get into this.
neurobiohacker is the ultimate one, and
Yes.
maybe one of these days I'll get
Neurobiohacker.
there. So
Me too.
Yeah. So, and that we'll put that maybe on the website. It's pursuitperformance.com. And we'll link to your practice, pursuitpt.com.
perfect.
Well.
Yeah, exactly. And to
Oh yeah. Sorry. Pursuitperformancetraining.com.
pursuitperformancetraining.com. That's
Yes.
it.
Yeah. Sorry,
Awesome.
I misspoke.
That's the right one.
Right.
We'll edit this out.
Right.
But also, I don't mean to. I don't want to open a can of worms in this episode. But are there different flavors of osteopathy or osteopathic manual treatment? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, obviously, we're going to promote what we think is the best or the most
Right.
helpful. And so, what for people looking for maybe the Google search osteopathic manual therapist near me, what I don't know, basic things should somebody look for in an osteopathic manual therapist? Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, that's a great question. So there are osteopathic physicians out there who do this work, right? And they were, of course, trained in osteopathic school. A lot of those, like for example, our mentor was an osteopathic physician trained in Kansas City osteopathic school, and then by various other osteopaths who had a lot of knowledge and a lot of years of treating patients, and so he had gained a tremendous amount of knowledge by taking classes from these people, and then he began teaching. So there are those people out there. There are osteopaths, and then there are people who say they're osteopathic. The hard part is going to be that everybody's onto gimmicks, and if somebody uses some term, pretty soon everybody's trying to use that term, going, "Yeah, me too."
Mhm.
So the Me Too crowd, it's really hard to necessarily know like who's the Me Too crowd, but there are a lot of people out there. They will have information on their website usually, or you'll be able to call them and ask them like, tell me how you're osteopathic. Like, oh, we use certain processes of treatment. We treat the body. We treat manually. We use our hands.
Mhm.
As opposed to like machines or
right.
gizmos.
Exercise.
More machines they use, and even to the point of red light therapy. Like for example, I'm not saying that I don't think red light therapy can be effective, but that's something you can do at home. Why do I need to bring you to my office to charge you?
Right.
Sure.
Right. And so anybody that's making money off the gimmicks and gizmos, that's not osteopathic. It's
It's kind of that devotion to therapy that I was trying to get at. Like you're like, oh, I do red light therapy, or I do this, or I do that. That's great if it's the thing. But I have patients that have serious neurologic injuries, and they're like, oh, I've been going to this red light therapy thing, and I'm like, yeah, but you have like physical damage in your, that's like scarring and stuff in your brain. Like it's going to take a lot of red light therapy, like
well, yeah.
lifetimes.
And red light therapy is just called infrared heating.
Yeah.
And so do we really need to cook the inside of you? I mean, that can be
Right.
beneficial. Heat to the inside. Yeah, that's
Mhm.
great. That's awesome. In areas that aren't, but if your body's not self-regulating its temperature, that's an autonomic or a sympathetic parasympathetic problem
Mhm.
that needs to be addressed through the nervous system and the other processes going on, the hormonal system. Those
Right.
systems are breaking down. So somebody that tells you that they treat autonomics, not just vagus, because that's the latest and greatest,
Yeah.
but sympathetics, parasympathetics, somebody that does cranial work, somebody that does soft tissue techniques. So there's a lot of terms that we use, muscle energy technique, strain, counter strain. There will be various things that these people will say. These are the techniques that I employ to deliver you, to remove dysfunction and restore your function and help you return to health.
And it's better if they have a variety. If it's not just I use
I'm a cranial
Craniosacral.
sacral person, and that's
Or
all I
I'm-
do. Yeah.
yeah. Because that's great if you have a craniosacral problem, but not everything is.
Well, and for the people at home, craniosacral problems are parasympathetic problems. So
Yep.
not only the vagus nerve, there's multiple parasympathetic nerves, and some of those parasympathetic nerves are in the sacrum. So they'll say, "Oh, I do craniosacral," or "I employ a skin stroking technique." Okay, well that's great, but do you actually treat a deeper structure, or you just stroke the skin all the time?
Mhm.
Just stroking the skin is nice, like a nice, a gentle massage. However, that's not going to treat. Stroking is not that's not a treatment in itself. That's a treatment technique that has to be employed in a larger, focused, more broad based treatment regimen. So
Right.
there's the techniques. So somebody who really tells you, "Oh, I just do this one technique. I'm an expert at this one technique." That's not osteopathic because you have to have multiple tools in your tool belt to treat all the multiple problems you will come in contact with, and there are multiple varieties of of the variations of the problem. For example, those hepatocytes, they have lymphatic needs, they have blood flow needs, they have various needs. They have, hey, we have to move when the diaphragm moves, when our person breathes. All those are needs, and there are different treatment techniques to do that. So yeah, there are other people out there, but we have our group of people, and certainly there are other people out there, and a lot of people are very happy with us, and they provide great treatment. So we're very encouraging of all that, and what we're encouraging people to do is to not just take the allopathic world, or what we call the MD worlds, as the only expert on health, because again, they're disease treatment. But as soon as your disease has been treated, and around treating your disease, there's the adjunctive therapy of helping make your body, allowing your body to return to health.
Gotcha. So you want to look for somebody who has multiple skill sets, someone who says that they treat the autonomic nervous system,
Maybe the autonomics, maybe they say, we treat sympathetics and parasympathetics
and the whole body.
and the whole body.
Yeah, as opposed to, just joints or
The only cranial sacral, or only the skin.
Yeah.
We only, or stroke the skin. Okay,
Yeah.
that's not gonna do anything. Or we only do joint mobilization.
right.
Okay, that's almost more chiropractic, right? Like traditional chiropractic. Though that doesn't mean that a chiropractor can't be an osteopathically minded practitioner, right?
Sure.
The letters at the end of your name, of the person's name, matter less.
Yeah. Okay.
Like I just had a patient a couple days ago text me. She came here visiting, got a treatment while she was here, went back home, and then she sent me like a link to a website of a bunch of doctor DOs that said they do different techniques and stuff, but they kept talking about hips and knees and hips and knees and hips and knees all the time, and I was like, well, they kind of seem like they like hips and knees. They have an ankle problem,
Right.
and so if they're really really focused on these kind of things, they might not be able
They're not
to
as
integrate that
osteopathic.
is what we would like, right? And yes, they
Right.
are DOs, right? But if they kind of have a favorite, or like a thing that they kind of specialize in, or that they really like to do, that kind of makes me go, I don't know if that's really that's not quite what we're after.
Well, because, and to really sum that up, is an osteopath isn't a specialist in a body part.
Right.
They're a
Right.
specialist in the body,
Right.
Yeah.
right? They treat everything, because I've never seen a knee or a hip walk down the road on its own. I've always seen it attached to some other body parts.
Yes.
Right.
Maybe even a shoulder and a neck and a back.
Yeah.
But at least something else.
For sure.
At least for me and Neal, we're trying to learn, and our colleagues too. We're trying to learn as much as we can about as many different things as we can, and be able to zoom in and zoom out whenever we can to provide restore
And
function.
say more about that zoom in and zoom out. What do you?
Well, like we start watching our patients as soon as they come to the door. They haven't even taken their seat off. They haven't taken their seat. They haven't told us what they're there for. We're going, no, I've got a couple ideas about things I'm going to need to do, because I can see these patterns. These things aren't working right, and they're always affiliated with something else. There's always two ends of the stick, right? Like we always heard from our mentor there, and so you kind of go, okay, well, but what is it? Do I intervene there first? And there are certain things we're taught how to organize information and how to assign the kind of a hierarchy of, do we treat in that 6-inch box right now? Or do we do that first? Do we do something else? And so, so you can kind of, and then you get like the history of your patient, and they tell you how life is for them. And then you can kind of go, okay, well, this is the overall picture. And then within the things that I know that there are these relationships, like this tends to boss these things around. Or if I have this, then I have this no matter what. Or if I have this, then I have this until proven otherwise, right? Those rules, that the TPOs and the NMWs, I just call them in my notes.
The no matter what's
Yeah.
and the TPOs.
Till proven otherwise.
Still proven otherwise. There we go.
Yeah, they all
Love
happen
it.
together. And so we kind of, and then you can, and then there gets a point where you kind of go, okay, well, let's from the test, this looks like the most beneficial place to start, right? That I can make the most interventions here, and it will take care of the things that are just artifacts of other things, most likely. And then we can, make an intervention, make a change there, and then we zoom out again and look at the picture again. What did that do? Do they move better than when they first came in here? Are they feeling like, wow, I'm taking deeper breaths? They look more calm. They look more relaxed. Then we know we're making some of that parasympathetic change, and their autonomics are starting to calm down. We're not, engaging things like the adrenals or some of those hormones are kind of calming down. And then we kind of go, okay, well, now with this big picture, I can see there's a problem over here. And then you can, with the tests that we know, is that this is the next place or where that one. So then you go make an intervention there and you zoom out again. So you're always kind of, trying to go, okay, well, this is the most likely place. I explain to my patients, I would like to try and only treat one thing or things one time. Now, there's multiple things that ding, like a hip or a knee or whatever. But when I treat something, I want to treat that part of whatever's going on with the knee or hip, and I don't want to fix that part again if I can help it. And so I want to make that intervention there and get that off the plate, and then anything else that's still bothering it, then I can fix those things. But if I'm doing the wrong thing, if I do it in the wrong order, I'm always going to have that recurrent thing. And I don't want bread and butter patients. I want new patients. I want people to get better. And I want them to tell them they had a good experience to someone else, and then I get a new patient instead. Stay busy. There's plenty of things to go wrong, but that's what I mean about zoom in and zoom out. You always look at the overall picture, decide in with our training, like where the most beneficial place at that time to intervene, and what they can handle too on that given day, right? And then make that intervention, and then zoom out again and be like, what did that do to the picture? And
Right. So which intervention process and at which times and in which order will be the most effective and beneficial for the patient so we can get them on with their life as soon as possible.
Yep.
And so we want our patients to die young, as old as possible.
Yep.
There you go.
Yep.
So that hopefully that helps everybody at home to understand why they need osteopathic manual therapy intervention in their health delivery to be healthy and to thrive, to survive and thrive. And thank both of you for showing up, and thank you for listening.
Thanks, Neal.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening to OsteoSignal with Neal O'Neal. For more information, visit pursuitpt.com or pursuitperformancetraining.com. Our music provided by Skytoes.